Welcome to the Enterprise Builders Podcast, powered by P3, where we feature top industry leaders discussing what it takes to build a profitable company and stay on top. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Aaron Stahl. I'm the CEO and founder of P3 Cost Analysts, and just like to welcome everybody today to our podcast. We've got Kirk McJunkin here. He's one of our more seasoned franchisees, and he's joining us for a little franchisee little mini series here on our podcast. So, Kirk, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, good to have you. So, we're going to talk about a wide range of stuff today. Hear a little bit more about Kirk's background personally and professionally, and how he got to where he is today, and any words of wisdom he can share with us, and just really his experiences along the way. So, with that being said, just want to dive right into it. And so, Kirk, I'd like everybody to hear a little bit more about you personally. Obviously, I know a little bit about you, but I'm excited to learn even more today. So, would love to just kind of hear a little bit more about where you're from, what it was like growing up. Just kind of walk us through some of that for a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I was born in Dallas, Texas, and raised right here. After high school, went to the University of Texas, where I studied business and finance. But going back to my childhood, had a mom from the South and a dad from Texas. So what you would say is I was raised in kind of a Leave It to Beaver environment with a Southern drawl and that more than they had, and with a lot better athletics and a lot of hunting and fishing. So I had the childhood dream as far as a young man growing up in this state with a dad that loved athletics and hunting and fishing, and taught me everything that he knew, from horses to cattle to that whole environment, to a mom that grew up in West Tennessee. And so we had the best cooking in the world and a great family life, very busy, hardworking mom and dad. With my neighborhood was one you walked outside, Aaron, in the 60s. You never locked the door, even in Dallas, Texas. And you came back, everybody dispersed at dinner time because that was your drop dead date. So you depended on your feet for transportation. And it was always about the nearest backyard or park for sandlot football, baseball, basketball, maybe even wrestling. So I had a great childhood, a lot of fun.
That's cool. That's awesome. I was literally, before you said Sandlot, I was literally thinking about that exact same movie. It's what it seems like. Sounds like a really cool way to grow up. Mine wasn't a lot different. I grew up on a farm, but it was kind of similar. You just left the house in the morning and came back at night. And that was kind of it. It was a really fun way to grow up and see what kind of adventures you could get into. Well, you touched on it a little bit. I'd like to dive into a little more because I know a little bit about this, but you said, you grew up in athletics, and I think you went on to have a little bit of a career in athletics. So I'd like to hear a little more about that.
Yeah, I was really blessed to have athletic gifts and talents, Aaron. And I learned at an early age, this is a little maybe something you're not asking for, but I learned at an early age, for a kid like me that loved adrenaline and was probably short attention, athletics fed me really well. And so with those gifts, I really worked at it. And so if I had spare time, I was going to be throwing the baseball, the football, or shooting baskets, or whatever it was, with friends. And so that eventually led to focusing in on baseball and football in high school. Was really blessed to get to look at both for collegiate participation. Even professionally in baseball. But let me tell you about that. For me, I chose football. A lot of people ask this, why'd you choose football over baseball? And for me, it was simple. Baseball talked about the colleges, talked about how fast you could end up in the major leagues. Mm-hmm. And I kind of had a better feel because of a high school coach that told me about the percentages. And even though you may be that good, an injury can really quickly derail that whole career path. So education was first. And because the football coaches stayed, and particularly the ones I talked to, your own University of Arkansas with Lou Holtz, Ron Meyer at SMU, and Fred Akers at Texas, were the three that it came down to the short list for. and chose Texas and was glad I did, not just because I had a great coach, great experience, and ended up playing football down there and really football over baseball because of the emphasis or equal emphasis on being a student athlete. And I don't think the baseball coaches were doing anything. I don't think they didn't care about the education. They probably underestimated how much my mom and dad built into me the value of a college education.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was a better baseball player than football player, I ended up playing football, started off at linebacker, ended up on the offensive line of all things. And it turned out to really fit my personality. It turned out to fit my skill set. I just wasn't as big as everybody else. I was the smallest guy on the line and drafted in the '84 draft to the Steelers, which was, for me, it was a childhood dream. Even though I grew up as a Cowboy watching 2 losses in the Super Bowl to the Steelers, you could not be a football player in the 70s and not admire the 70s Steelers. With 4 Super Bowl appearances, 4 Super Bowl wins, with some incredible personalities that were big personalities, but also great athletes. You know, the Bradshaw, Lambert, Joe Green, Andy Russell, Franco Harris, Rocky Blyer, Swan and Stallworth. Those were all household names, at least in my neighborhood growing up. So it was a real thrill to have them select me and go up there and be a part of them for a couple of years.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So for the people that either may be watching this or may just be listening to this, Kirk and I met virtually during the pandemic, like how we meet a lot of franchisees anyway. But first time I met him down in Dallas, I was shocked at how gigantic he is. He doesn't come across as big or menacing on camera, but I can see how you would have played offensive line in the NFL. So it's very, very cool. So I'm curious because I am a huge Hog fan, but I don't know my 70s Hogs like I should. But how did you guys do versus the Razorbacks back then?
We lost in 79, won in 82 and 83. So 81, of all things, Aaron, we were number 1 in the nation, went up to Arkansas. It's my most memorable college game. And I hope we have time for this, but they wouldn't let us. They wouldn't let us stay in Fayetteville, and the reason was that they knew there was no way that we would get to sleep, right? Because the Hog fans were going to circle the hotel, and so they were trying to keep it low key that the Longhorns were in town. Well, what they did is put us in Fort Smith. Well, okay, brother, look. It took no time at all before hotel staff and others figured out. We practiced, I think, I can't remember if we went up to Fayetteville. No, we landed in Fayetteville. I think we practiced there, then drove down to Fort Smith, hoping that we would just kind of disappear and the Arkansas students and fans would go about their business. Well, they didn't. We went down to a Holiday Inn, I think, in Fort Smith. And I got to tell you this because the waitresses, the staff, everything about it, they were so sold out Razorback that they would drop your plate and it would almost hit in front of you with a bang. You know, service went out the window. There weren't a lot of smiles. It was like I could tell that wait staff felt like they were aiding and abetting the enemy. And so we got through that night, got through all our meetings, we go to bed, and I'm telling you, it was like Indians surrounding the wagon train in the Old West all night long, horns blowing, suey pig on loudspeakers. So I'm telling you, every one of us on the team saw 2:00 in the morning before we probably fell asleep. The next morning, the security, the highway patrol for Arkansas, it was rainy. There was a front coming in. They said, we got to get you guys on the road early. So we moved up our travel time. And you don't have it now, but in those days, we had a long, windy 2-lane road on this bus. And all I can remember is we're driving, everybody's doing this. We were all green with motion sickness by the time we got to Arkansas, and they got us there really early. We had to stay in the locker room all day. Long before you want to. And you can just watch the energy of our team just drain out on the floor. stuck in this stuffy old locker room at the north end of the stadium there in Fayetteville, the old one. And so when the game actually started, we fumbled a handoff, first series, touchdown Arkansas. We fumbled the snap, I think, touchdown Arkansas, snapped the ball over the punter's head, safety Arkansas, 16-0 within minutes. And then the next series, I think we threw an interception after running a few plays. And I think Arkansas had 23 points in less than 3 minutes off the clock. And so they went on and got a big victory, knocked off the number one team in the nation. And I'm telling you what, we couldn't run on the field without falling down in Fayetteville. But it was quite the experience. The fans, there was an old fence, Aaron, that was about 6-7 feet behind the bench at that stadium. And the students would run down. And I'm not accusing them, but I'm thinking a few of them had got overserved at some point. And they would lean over the fence and call your name out. So if it said Stall or whatever on the back of your jersey, they would, McJunkin, you're no good, and just yell in your ear. I mean, literally right there. So I'm looking over to Highway Patrol for Arkansas, state of Arkansas. Look at this brother. He's standing right over here. And they were kind of like they were guarding our bench, right? So empty bottles and things would rain down on us from the stands. I look and I go, "Hey man, are you gonna do something about that?" And his comment was, "Put your helmet on."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. He was not. They were not going to stop it. So
unbelievable.
We couldn't wait to get out of there. But those fans had so much fun. They had the greatest time of their life. I hate that we had to be a part of such a great memory for them, but that was 1981, and we had just beaten OU, and I forgot who else. No, we beat Miami. Jim Kelly with Miami the first game, and then forgot who else, maybe Rice and somebody else, and then OU, who was really good at the time. And then we went into Arkansas, and y'all were good. Don't make mistakes about it. We were favored, but y'all were good.
That's awesome.
That's the way it gamed it up. So we head to the airport and fly back to Austin with the only loss on our record for 1981.
Unbelievable. That's a great story. I've followed the Hogs for a long time and talked to a lot of older Hog fans that have not heard that. So that's great.
It's the game. If you've ever heard a rumor about Holtz throwing his watch,
okay.
he got and Arkansas was way ahead. We could just never really get back in the game. We moved the ball late and made some good things happen, but we never threatened the win, the scoreboard or threatened to win. But Holtz got a call that didn't go his way. And I mean, he took I think it was his watch, pulled it off, and about the 45-yard line, just heaved it. And you see the little bitty object flying down. And I mean, of course, he knew how to work that crowd, but it was the game that he threw his watch down in the end zone. People asked, when we got home from TV, what was that was going on? Well, it was Lou Holtz throwing his watch.
That's awesome.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
That's great. Yeah, I wonder, I'm guessing not many people knew the backstory at the time about how y'all are harassed into not sleeping.
Oh, yeah. No, they don't. And you have to smile because I would have thought it'd been better off to fly in the morning,
Clearly.
Keep us away from Arkansas altogether because we would just laugh. We'd go, "Oh God." I remember my roommate would go, "Did you hear that?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's 1:32 in the morning and they're circling. I think it was a Holiday Inn in
That's
Portsmouth."
Incredible. Man, times have definitely changed. I mean, that makes, I went to school at U of A too, and I don't know, we had fun. We were crazy, but we weren't that crazy. So it's interesting to hear how the fans have maybe chilled out a little bit. Cause I know if you go to restaurants or maybe like a liquor store or something, sometimes in the cash register, there'll be a little button there. Like it'll say like a Longhorn tax. It's more of a joke, but
exactly.
If you just hit the button, it adds 10% to the bill or something. But
the rumor was that you needed to fill up. If you're going to come 412, I think it was not Siloam Springs. What's the last little town in Oklahoma? But rumored was don't try to fill up on game day in Arkansas because they might not sell you gas. That was the rumor. I don't know if it was true, but it sure made for a lot of fun. And I'll be honest with you, the Longhorns have always missed that rivalry. And Broyles and our AD had a good relationship. And another backstory, which will be interesting to me people on this podcast. But I know our AD tried hard to keep Frank from going to the SEC as early as he did so we could stay together. Try to keep the package of Texas, A&M, Arkansas, and OU together, because we really thought those four programs, were the anchors of the day. And of course, they were such good rivalries, both locally and nationally.
Well, it's coming back. So
the
Wolf pack will be back together there. That'll be exciting. Well, awesome. Well, Kirk, thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you bet.
Definitely amped up my interest in the Arkansas-Texas rivalry. I've always recognized that and been interested in it, but that's really cool to hear.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. All right. So moving on a little bit, I want to hear kind of from the, NFL, obviously you were there for a little bit and then started your professional career. So, walk us through a little bit of your career after the NFL and then, up until joining P3 would be great.
Yeah. I joined a family business after graduating from University of Texas in Pittsburgh was over. And I was a finance major and business major. So really management, leadership, marketing, and business development were probably more my gift set rather than the technical side of construction. So that's what I spent my years doing. And by being in a family business, I learned a lot about real estate, transactions, construction, working in the city of Dallas, and really loved it. My dad had a cancer diagnosis, and we needed to succeed the business and buy it out and get the ownership and the governance the way it needed to be for the bonding and surety companies and really any other creditors, Aaron. As you know, those are important to the long-term sustainment of most businesses. And in the middle of buying and getting all of the ownership of the business to my father and I, and we were a mid-size. We were about 250 million in revenue. So it was in those days, it was a mid-size business for Dallas, Texas. Today, all my competitors are 500 million plus, probably more like 600, 700 million in revenue. But anyway, in those days, that's what we were doing. Our cash was kind of low, and 9/11 occurred. And even prior to that, we were building a big job for Exxon for mobile. Well, when ExxonMobil merged, Exxon shut down the job. That was a $100 million single contract job, actually in two phases, but it was going to be about $100 million revenue stream to the business over that preceding 2 years of 2000, 2001, 2002. So that really hurt to be minus the cash flow from that project. Then you had the shakeup in the surety industry worldwide with Enron, WorldCom, and 9/11. So our surety came to us and dropped us. And that meant I didn't have any more rating or credit at this point. And it made obtaining new business and completing our business succession nearly impossible and eventually put us out of business. So I spent the next 5 or 6 years trying to help my father land this plane and keep liabilities away from him, his estate, and what he had left, and myself. And so it was a really, really challenging time. When that was over, eventually got to work, did some consulting work on my own, and then worked for J.E. Dunn, another large commercial construction company here in the Dallas area. And then for a little bit with Oldcastle, which is a very large construction supply company, helping them with strategic development. And I really enjoyed that. It was just not a long-term job. And while I loved and missed the construction industry, I was approached to be the athletic director for a small, it was a large private school here in Dallas area. And that was really a passion of mine because over the years in business, learned a lot about leadership and management, which I really wanted to apply in a different environment. But I always loved athletics and loved that space of I had raised my kids by this point. 2 had played in college. one still had eligibility in college to play at the time. So I felt like that navigating that space with my boys and then raising my girls in athletics helped me out and doing a lot of coaching and then ministry. My wife and I are Christians, and so a Christian private school to be an athletic director to me seemed to be a dream. And I went and did that for about 4 years and loved the idea of the intersection of leadership, ministry, and athletics all in the same place, and really loved that and was able to bring a lot of what I learned in college and in the NFL into that space. So really that 30 years or so that I just summarized was great for me to get mentored under my dad and some other wonderful men that really knew as much about building cultures and leading in good cultures, Aaron, as it was being good managers. We can find a lot of good managers, but not all of them are great leaders. And I was under some really good ones, both athletically with the Longhorns and the Steelers, and then my business career with Dalmat Construction and Development here in the Dallas area. And then to deploy that in a nonprofit world or in what I would call a ministry with the private school was really a lot of fun. That lasted about 4 years and took us right up into COVID.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. I mean, it goes by quick. I mean,
it does.
Everything you just described sounds like multiple lifetimes, and then all of a sudden there's COVID. That's pretty cool. All you've done in your career. So, okay. So then, right around COVID was about the time you joined up with P3. So I guess I'm curious what maybe sparked the entrepreneurial bug. I mean, you talked a little bit about your passion for leadership and all these other skills you acquired over the years, but what specifically made you want to start your own business?
Yeah, let's and let me back up just a moment to manage that question. My time with the private school was good, but it was clear to me that I wasn't a good fit. I'm a high love, high discipline guy, and I would have raised my kids that way. And when I coached in teams and led organizations, I was the same way. High love means I care about them. I'm going to encourage them. I'm going to empower them. I'm going to equip them to do their job and do it well, but then have a really high discipline of expectations of really about commitment. And what was happening is I was beginning to age out in the business world when I went over from the family business into another firm that was a completely different culture. Aaron, it was much more political. I would say that accuracy in business reporting wasn't always the deal. It was maybe as much about what people wanted to see so they could shed favorable light. And so a couple of the environments I worked in had kind of a fear-based environment where people were afraid to really share accuracy with financial reporting or maybe what's going on a job site or whatever it may be. That's just not the way I was raised. It's not the way I wanted to lead. And I would tell staff that, look, in a lot of ways, you all are consultants to me where the buck has to stop. I need to be surrounded by good consultants, and to make quality decisions, I've got to have quality information. And so I depend on you for that. Well, I would tell you that model is good and is as much clarity as it sounds. It disrupted, I think, a couple of different cultures. And I think my directness, which if I could do it over again, I may try to pull that back some, but I would be direct. And as a leader, always wanted to be very clear. And I noticed that earlier in my career, and for the longest part, until I left the first organization, that was really awarded and applauded, but it wasn't in the other communities.
Right.
And that was really puzzling to me. So when COVID came around and the school let me go, and I was very confused about why. Well, it turns out that it just was philosophical. We were trying to build men and use athletics as the platform. But if kids and parents have a recreational commitment, but championship expectations, those two don't go together.
Mm-hmm.
So we, and trying to say, hey, if you've got championship expectations, this is what that's going to look like in today's time. This is what we need to do. This is the work ethic we need. Well, just to leave it there, I wasn't a good fit for them, and they really weren't a good fit for me either. And so that ended in the fall of 19, or late summer, and then we roll right into COVID. Mm-hmm. So I had some people that said, Kirk, let's take a little money here and let's buy businesses. We started looking at buying businesses, but COVID kept shutting down. It delayed hiring and it delayed people selling businesses. All right. So I said, the big variable here is this unknown. And the way for me to remove the unknown is to start looking at startup and look at means for doing that. And that's where franchising came to the surface. Mm-hmm. Looking at the qualities and characteristics of what franchises and what they do, I was trying to look at something that I had minimal amount of capital available, but I had a lot of experience and a good Rolodex, good relationships, good experience. And my age was an area where those weren't, my age wasn't going to be a weakness. The other two are obvious strengths, but my age could actually be a strength as well. And so running my own business it gave me the absence of complex political environments. It was the absence of trying to adjust to Gen X, Gen Y, and Z, and all of the changes that are coming. Because what I did notice is that when I would walk into a room, the greater the year separation in age, Aaron, the more challenges that I had connecting and really earning their trust. It was almost as though they were more afraid of me and intimidated, and it was very difficult to get over that. And I'm not talking about me coming in laying things out like a Marine drill sergeant. I was wiser, enough to not ever do that, but to try to have clarity, expectations, and a work ethic that I had been raised with was very challenging. And so the working for myself gave me a freedom for that, and gave me a chance to use leadership and management principles directly with and in service of my clients and customers rather than with my own staff. And so what I've done is just try to adapt the very things I've learned in trying to manage and lead people with managing, leading, and serving the people that I call on. So I hope that answers the question, but that was my transition, was away from things that I was starting to be penalized for, to finding something that my strengths and life experiences would reward me. And given that time of COVID, it just seemed wise. And so I started looking at franchises, and that allowed me to buy into one on my time frame and not somebody else's time frame. Does it make sense?
Absolutely. That's great. I mean, that's something maybe I take for granted just because I've had two jobs where I worked for somebody else. I worked for my parents on my parents' farm, and I was a dishwasher in Montana in college one summer. And otherwise, I've always worked for myself. And I think the politics of companies and the differences of cultures and the clash are just something that I haven't had to experience as much as people that have had careers in the corporate world. And I can really hear the struggle there, and it's refreshing to be able to choose your own path. And Kirk Williamson, who I talked to recently on this podcast, said the same thing. It's like companies don't value wisdom and experience, and it's just very bizarre. I mean, it's just, I guess, ego gets in the way, but it just I don't know. It seems like those people should be the ones everybody listens to. So and corrals into their organization.
Yeah, you would think, but. I found it very challenging. I loved a playbook, Aaron, and I loved knowing what the target was, the goal. And the thing about a playbook is everybody knows what they're doing. The roles are real clear. And I discovered, and I thought this was interesting, that not all companies and organizations like clarity. And there's some really shrewd people out there that don't necessarily like clarity either. The reason is I think that they operate really well camouflaged in the absence of real clear roles and definitions.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
It's not clear whose job is what or who's responsible. They can migrate and settle into what they want, but that can leave holes in the overall execution of a plan. And I was a guy that wanted to say, all right, we can put the plan together collaboratively, but then let's talk about taking the strengths and weaknesses and making sure we have all the weaknesses covered. Let's go about this in a way that would be approached much like a football play. Mm-hmm. And I loved that. And there were some that would go, man, Kirk or Mr. McJunkin, I love the clarity. And then there were others that you could really see they were pulling on the bit because it really, I think there was an implied accountability that goes with clarity that not all people are comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And I think over time, I found more and more folks that saw that clarity and accountability as a means to control them rather than allow them to do their job well and to serve the overall whole. Make sense?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's so many different organizations ran in different ways. And, I want to say different structure, different folks in some sense, but without that clarity and that structure and that accountability, you're kind of a ship lost at sea, I feel like. So I think that's one thing that's fascinating about the business that we're in is we get to witness behind the scenes all sorts of different organizations. We're not working with one specific industry really. And so you get to see them run in all sorts of different ways. And it's really fascinating. And I can totally appreciate how one style is, if it doesn't jive with the company, even though it may be the way forward, it's not going to work. It's corporate culture is pretty interesting. So exactly. I can relate 110%. Well, very cool. So, all right. Well, that makes a lot of sense, obviously, as to why you landed on entrepreneurship. And obviously, I know you had quite a bit of experience with it with your dad's company. I guess while we're talking about that, because I don't want to discount your history, when you were working with your dad, did that feel like business ownership to you, or did that feel like helping the family business out? And this is the first kind of endeavor into Kirk controlling his own destiny.
Yeah, you're right. It's the latter. This is the first time Kirk managing and working towards his own destiny. Mm-hmm. The other one, I saw myself as my dad had started it. And looking at the life cycle curve of a business, we were up here where we were now mature. And so the goal for me was how to maintain and increase value without necessarily reinventing everything.
Right.
I wasn't so much wanting to put my fingerprint on it as I wanted to be able to sustain it from a guy that dad made all the decisions and I had to move it to more of a decentralized decision making. Mm-hmm. And operate it differently in order for us to grow and take advantage of what is today in Dallas an unbelievable market for those contractors because of the growth in our state. We doubled our population here since I started in business, to give you an idea of how many people have moved in. So this does definitely feel like my first time to be responsible, to make all the decisions, be responsible for them all. And I'm really enjoying that. Enjoying that. Yeah.
Good deal. So then I guess specifically you looked at a lot of different businesses and I think everybody that joined P3 probably did too. I'm curious specifically for you, like why the cost reduction industry? What about saving people money got you excited or interested?
Well, I liked it, Aaron, because there was no risk and people are growing increasingly risk diverse, I'm seeing in business. And my generation is becoming more and more distrusting of social media. In fact, that whole space of, let's say, the software and technology, social media, et cetera, creates a lot of confusion and separation in communication between people and their own staff. And there's a tendency for them to go, look, man, I just want life to be simple. And I want to focus on the core competency. And so I was looking for something that was simple in its principles, simple in in its deliverable. We're either going to deliver you peace of mind, or we're going to increase your profits. And we're going to do it. The only thing you're risking is the time it takes for you to get us the data. And let's add to that and make the decision to proceed or not to proceed.
Right.
So that offering, and I summarize it very quickly, but the offering was easy to understand. I thought the offering was a win. It was only a win-win if we produced. Otherwise, for them, it was, like I said, peace of mind, or it's a win for them. So I never thought about cost reduction, but I know in the construction company where margins were getting squeezed, we were becoming more of a commodity. This is the way that we wanted to mine more gold out of the mine, or we wanted to find and extract more oil, if you will, from the reserve. Mm-hmm. And so we're able to do that for other people. And I really like that, to be able to tell them, it's a little bit like saying, look, you've got oil under your property, Aaron. And we'll do all the exploration. We'll punch all the holes. We'll develop the well and complete the well. And then we'll send you a royalty check. I got it, Kirk. I can do it. I've got a good shovel. I know good and well, all day long, you're not gonna be able to do what we can do to tap into that resource that's under your property. And that's the way I think about it with my clients, is that we're able to do for them what they can't do for themselves. Mm-hmm. They could be out there with a shovel all day long, and they're not going to get to 3,000 feet and get to the right place, right? So the same is here. So that has been something I've enjoyed communicating and helping them realize and get to that point is been a real challenge and something I really enjoy.
Very good. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think when I was getting in this industry, that was one of the things that gravitated me toward it, was just the fact that I figured if I could help businesses save money, they're going to like having me around. And for the most part, that's proven true. I think one of the difficulties of this business that I'd like to talk a little bit more about is that, we know we can help everybody, or at least 90% of the businesses that we work with, we can help. Yeah. And it's always frustrating that not everybody says yes, right? Because we think 100% of the people should give us a chance, right? Even if they are one of the 10% that we can't help. So, I want to hear a little bit more about surprises, struggles, difficulties there, starting your business and what you've learned, and any insight you can share.
Yeah. And if I get off track, bring me back.
No worries.
So I think one of the biggest early mistakes, Aaron, is I wrestled in a weight class that I didn't belong in too early. And I should have, while I tried to immerse myself in the knowledge of our product and what we do, I went to some companies that, by virtue of them being able to high center me in one meeting, I think I lost credibility with them. Uh-huh. And so I think I would have waited, number one, to start off with smaller private businesses where I had really, really high relational trust. And even though I was new in the industry and new at the business, wasn't as much at risk. And then I would have saved I would have saved those heavyweights for when I was a better wrestler. In other words, for when I was a better player, better presenter, better understanding, and gotten some more reps than I had. So that was number one, was I jumped out there too quickly with a few. And so that was a big learning for me, number one. The other one was that I'm seeing this growing dynamic that I'm sensing across the table as I'm visiting with somebody and trying to dialogue and ask questions and find out where in this vendor category do they have some sore spots, that they're often defensive, as though they're feeling like they're being out negotiated. And I want to put them at the same ease that again the petroleum engineer would with a ranch owner. The ranch owner knows when that guy walks the door that he can't do what that petroleum engineer can do. He doesn't have the technology to find the reserve. He doesn't have the technology to punch the holes and get to it, complete the well. Like I said, he thinks he's got a shovel. He knows he can't get to it. Mm-hmm. But these guys I'm finding, and there's a few industries that I notice that it's really high in. They're protective of something. I haven't been able to necessarily discern what they're protective of, but I'm sneaking up on the answer that it's believing that, Kirk, if I do this with you, I know that I've surrendered and you're going to out negotiate me because you're going to find the savings. And so I'm wondering why the joy isn't greater with some of them when I come back in and go, hey, we found 33%. Like, really? And instead of, man, that's great. I've had one or two actually that have responded with joy. A few of the others have looked at me like they were almost disappointed. And I think with a couple of them, Aaron, it has been because they didn't believe that we could. Mm-hmm. And so when we did it, it was a little bit of a loss for them because we were able to do what they can't do for themselves. So I'm starting to want to respect that. And then the last one is that I'm learning is that I might say to somebody, hey, we're going to do and I'm careful with the term audit, but they'll look the picture. I've presented to a guy, then turned around and listened to him tell somebody else. And so you're getting to watch the telephone game in action. And what the guy did, Aaron, is he heard me, and then he turned around and explained it as though it was a tax audit with one of the big, public firms. And I would have to go, I'm not, in my head, I'm going, man, I know I didn't say that, but I know that's what he heard. And so when he repeated, he just fell back onto terms and concepts that he, believes that's what I'm talking about. So sometimes I'd have to go back and redo it and say, can I interrupt for a moment there? This is a really simple process, and it's designed for you to be very passive. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All we need is data.
It's definitely not a tax audit.
Yeah, it's not we're not going to be in the room with you, and I'm literally have probably 3 or 4 right now that have called me back in 3 months because I've hired somebody new and they're not ready to start a new program. And oftentimes you're on the phone wanting to go, whoa, it's not a program. You just kind of want to say, however long it takes them to get me the data, then they're finished. Uh-huh. And so in covering your question, Aaron, those are my lessons. All that has resulted in my expectations for time from close to cash. I'm expecting it to be a little bit longer. I've got closings that are taking, 6 to 9 months. So persistence has been a big deal, endurance with me, and learning to keep the conversation alive as you move it along. And I'm letting them slowly kind of get over whatever fear, whatever it is to remove the mystery is as long as I'm going to take. I try to push that learning curve, but I'm finding that if I'll ride with them instead of pushing them or pulling them, it goes a little better for me. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, those are all certainly challenges of our offering and business development in general, but I think specifically with our offering, because people don't think they need our help. Right. And then it's like, in some ways it feels too good to be true. We're not charging you. We're only going to split the savings if we help you. And so people are just like, okay, what are you pulling over on me here? So it takes a little while for people to get comfortable with you. And I've had deals that closed the first day and some that took over a year. And, there's obviously different factors involved, size of the company, economic conditions at the time, but that can be frustrating, especially when, you have the solution, but that's business development. And I think the other thing you touched on as well is, you're right. Sometimes when you go find people a lot of money, they're surprised. They're not necessarily just giving you a little virtual high five there. They're just kind of like, what happened? And, I always tell my clients, at least back when I was doing more business development, I'm like, look, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you or your staff here. This is normal for the industry. And it's like, this is just because this is what we do every day, day in and day out. And we specialize in it, and we have 30,000 data points across the country to reference. So it's not magic. It's just hard work. And on the front end, if I'm talking to somebody, and I've had some skeptical clients that just couldn't get it, and they might be running a group of restaurants, and I'll be like, look, man, like, I'm sure you could take a restaurant that was not profitable and turn it around in 6 months and probably have it profitable. I'll be like, I'm a pretty smart guy, at least I think I am. And you give me the keys to that restaurant, whether it's already profitable or it's not, I'm running it into the ground. And now you give me 10 years in the industry, I think I could run a restaurant pretty good. Yeah. I'll be like, it's the same thing. If you wanted to focus on your trash bills every day for 10 years, you wouldn't need us. You'd be pretty good at it, but you're running your business, right? So that's what you focus on. And that's what makes you good, is running the entire restaurant, not trying to be an expert in copiers or uniform and linen. And I think most people get that when it's positioned that way. It's just all about putting people in the right places that are experts at what they do and focus. So, but yeah, that's a challenge. It really is. I think that's, like you said, it's a challenge, but at the same time, nothing worth having comes easy, right? So
yeah, and it's so our coaches used to say, "What's the number one quality all coaches want?" This was 40 years ago, but players would raise their hand: strength, agility, quickness, speed. They would say humility, to be teachable.
Mm-hmm.
So being teachable or humble. And I'm finding the same thing here, is that I love it when I can sit across from somebody, and instead of seeing prideful response, I see someone that I love it when they go, really? Because then they're starting to consider that they're willing to learn something. Mm-hmm. And I love that client that is teachable and wants to learn and will ask all the hard questions, because I love our concept. It'll stand up to any scrutiny that somebody wants to ask. Mm-hmm. But man, I look for that. I don't always get it, but I'm having to overcome. This feeds into your previous question too, is learning to discern, that EQ of the guy you're talking to or gal. How much of those defenses up? And do you have a learner over there? Do you have somebody with humility that some of the smartest, brightest people I know come across with humility to learn and listen to you and and ask you hard questions, and they're taking it in. I love that. But the more challenging ones for me are the ones that think they're going to dig the oil up with a shovel.
Sure. Yeah. It's just all about people and relating to them. And then I think the fun part, I guess, for me when I was doing it all the time, and when I was talking to Shannon, Shannon comes from an accounting background, and he's not as much of a natural salesperson as I would say even I am, or like Chris Atkinson, or you're obviously a really good people person. But it took a lot of like practice, I guess, and getting in front of people to get comfortable to where you could truly be yourself and respond in certain situations and talk to people like they're humans and not just a script that you've really tried to internalize. And I think once you get to that point, then you're really able to truly help people, because we know we have a service that can help them. So the hard part then is getting them to realize that and trust you to let you do what we think is insanely risk-free, but from their perspective, it's first do no harm. And so trying to get through that and connect with somebody when there's like 50,000 different personality types is tough, but it ends up being really fun, once you get in there and get good at it. Yeah. So completely agree with that. So
yeah.
All right. Well, so I guess you've done pretty well starting out, Kirk. Landed quite a few clients, and I know you have way bigger plans, but I want to talk a little bit about your daily rituals, weekly rituals, what's worked for you to get the most traction kind of starting out.
Yeah. So Sunday night, I'm going to look at the week ahead. Monday, on the mornings, I'm going to address what's important and urgent. In the afternoon, I'm going to address what's important. And so, makes sense?
Yeah, so, I've never heard it put that way, but I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, important and urgent means I had a country club here locally that the recycled folks didn't pick up the recycle, and we've got to. They're going to, naturally they're calling us, so we're going to be getting our staff and wheels in motion to help support them. So that's urgent and important, right? Mm-hmm. And then important is going to be following up on those strategic tasks. You're probably a hunter as well, but one thing when you're hunting big game is you don't ever get distracted and hunt rabbits or hunt birds. That's right. Whatever you're hunting, you keep hunting it. And so I don't like and being given to ADD or given to distraction, every time a rabbit runs in front, I don't want to chase it and let it cause me to pull off so I have rabbits and elephants, and rabbits are things, sometimes they got to be dealt with. I'm going to try to get them in the morning or late in the evening, but the morning time up until lunch is urgent and important. The afternoon is important. I keep a list and a journal of and write it down of what I need to be doing. I cannot keep up with it all. There's no administrative help. So those are my rituals. And then I'll set time aside typically when I'm not mentally exhausted or emotionally exhausted, and think through new prospects and review each one that I sign. I'm going to study the dynamics in their industry to see if those same dynamics can be overlaid anywhere else, Aaron. And then so that's going to feed into my populating the new prospect list. Mm-hmm. I work a little bit unique, and I'm not the sales guy that is making 100 calls to sign 4. I'm doing a lot of homework, and I'm still working my relationships, Aaron, to meet with people that I know really well, or that people that know me really well can make a reference to somebody else. And so, again, when I say what's important, mean the 8 to 5 is important to the development of and the sustainment of the business that's more operational. After dinner, other hours, margin on the weekends, because my kids are grown and out of the house. That's when I'll spend my time to be innovative and creative. Mm-hmm. And so it gives me longer stretches of time, and that really works good for me. I need to be box checking and knocking things out, in that 8 to 4 time, but that time after dinner, if I'm not reading or something, sure. I love to be innovating and learning about what I'm doing. Does that help?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're 100% right. It does seem like when you're relaxed, sometimes you have the best ideas, right? I mean, sometimes, and so that's why maybe the evening or the weekends are best for that. I've gotten into surfing the last few years, and not intending to be scheming or thinking about business out there in the waters. But sometimes, you're just, you're feeling good, and all of a sudden a great idea happens. So you're right. During the day, it's a little more check the box action items, urgent and important.
It definitely. The dynamics of the day are like a football play while it's occurring. The only thing you control is your effort. So when I can get that margin, like you said, that picture of floating on your surfboard. Yeah. And the other thing I meant to mention, by the way, and I learned this at the Center for Brain Health, having a heavily concussed brain, myself and other combat veterans in Dallas area got to take part in a grant. There was a huge grant given to study the brains after the movie Concussion came out of combat veterans and football players. Well, we have a saying, zoom in and zoom out. And so some people are zoomed out all the time, which are those big picture people that have a real hard time zooming in. Well, they've kind of taught us to do both, to discipline yourself to zoom in, and zooming in is dealing with the details of some issue, maybe more about tactics, but then you've got to discipline yourself to zoom out and get up high and look at it from beginning to end, and let the picture change of what's going on. And Darren, Aaron, that's been really valuable for me when evaluating what I can learn. So if I'm zoomed in on a furniture distributor and retailer that we've signed, And I'm learning from them. The zoom out is, what are the same dynamics that other industries may have or other people may have? And what are the natural connections to them that may help me build my business? So I wanted to say that because there may be guys out there that get stuck, and a lot of people toggle all day long between zooming in and zooming out, and that can be real confusing. It is for me, this heavily concussed mind. So I like to purposely stay either zoomed in or zoomed out, but I try to minimize how much I go in and out in the dynamic of a situation. Make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's been numerous studies about multitasking having negative effects on the brain.
There you go.
And that's probably a healthy brain, much less one that's been through a career like you had physically. Yep. So that's good advice for anybody. I really like that. Honestly, I mean, I can do better at that. I mean, I'm pretty good at getting in the zone when I need to, but I have my email open when I'm trying to do something else. It's all over, it's like super distracting. So that's great. So I want to move on to maybe a little more high level question. Sure. Would love to hear your thoughts on if or how owning a business has changed you, and maybe combine that into also, what you're proud of in relation to your business.
When you first asked that question, how has it changed me? My gut wants to say it hasn't, but that's not true. Here's the way it's changed me. Even though the cash flow is coming in following the clients that we've signed and the work that we're doing, I'm still not at a place where I want to be. But you know what? I'm not anxious about it. And that's a good thing. And so when I say it hasn't changed me, is I'm finding out that the absence of the complexity of management and leadership in the politics that went, I realized, Aaron, I'm not good at party politics or the social dynamics in certain like at the school culture was really challenging for me. There's certain other businesses that just the nature of the way they are really challenging. And so the distraction of making decisions and what will he or she think, and it just gets like, I want to simplify and bring clarity to making decisions. And so the absence of all that complexity, if I can just call it that, been really good and allowed me to focus. And so where I am in this time, the way it's changed me is I'm less anxious. I've noticed my temper and my fuse for getting angry is much longer. I also credit that to a book called Unoffendable by Brent Hansen, which I recommend to anybody. But so when I say how has it changed me, it's afforded me to have a much more healthier work balance or integrated work lifestyle.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like I said, I can only imagine how stressful that environment could be in a corporation where you're not really clicking on all cylinders with everybody else, right?
Or some mom that comes in and wants to know why her daughter's not dancing on the front row, in the drill team show at halftime. You're going, well, because she's not that good. And so the coach has her in the back, well, that wasn't the answer you're supposed to give them. So that has been good for me. And I've got an 88-year-old mother and an 88-year-old mother-in-law, and my wife and I kind of help take care of them. So if I have 30 minutes in a day that I need to go help them, I can go do it and come back and pick up my work. And so I'm one of those that likes having that I can walk 20 feet over to my office and work at 9-10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, it really is.
And I enjoy it.
Total freedom. It really is.
Yeah.
And I think now's a good time. And I haven't really been doing this in other interviews, but I think it's important to really talk about the difficulties of entrepreneurship versus having a job, because like in exchange for not having that freedom and potentially having those conflicts where you don't feel like you're either helping the company, or you're not jiving with the people you're working with, or all those things that can happen in the corporate environment that honestly I don't know about as well as people like you do. You get a salary and you get paid every 2 weeks immediately, right?
Yeah.
And so then you step into the world of business ownership and you're not making anything.
That's right.
And so you've got total freedom, but you have no money. And
That's
so there is an absolute trade-off there. And the quintessential thing that I tell people when they're getting into business is that delayed gratification is the fundamental foundation of entrepreneurship and business ownership. And if you're not prepared to do that, you definitely should not get into business, because right now, Kirk, you're in the grind. The grind is when you're building the snowball, right?
Yeah.
And you're living within your means, or you're using savings, and you're growing the business. And then, but it's definitely the delayed gratification phase. And so you do get some more of that, that freedom in your schedule, the feeling of controlling your own destiny, all those things that I think are massively important for people that desire that. But there's a trade-off, right? And so, you've done really well. And I know you're on an awesome path, but like you said, you're not where you want to be, and I don't blame you. So I think that, I think that's just really important for people to understand, because I don't know, friends of mine, I think, or maybe not now, but in the past, I just feel like there's this connotation of, oh, you own your own business, you're doing great. You're making a lot of money, you own you're a business owner. But you got to work, you got to work and grind. And the people that have the ship pointed in the right direction, that are working and grinding, they haven't arrived necessarily. Right. Yeah. And so, it's a trade-off. And I think, the people that choose it, it's obviously worth it. Right. But it's tough. So anyway, I don't know. I always just like to touch on that, because I don't know, maybe people discount how difficult it is. And I remember when I first got started in this business, I spent the first 2 years calling on Fortune 500 companies, and I have told this story a lot, and didn't get anywhere. And I was a one-man show, which is just the height of stupidity in hindsight. Didn't have a pitch, didn't have a sporting cast, no references, nothing. And finally, started local and built the business slowly, but it wasn't easy. But I don't know. It just there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, that's what I was doing, wrestling out of my weight class. I was calling on people that, I didn't probably weren't gonna do it.
Yeah, when you mentioned that earlier, I was actually thinking, like, when people try to sell me something, or they're calling to sell, and sometimes I can tell if it's somebody brand new because they sound really nervous or something. Yeah. Like it's been good that I've had that experience, because I actually just kind of give them maybe a little more of a chance, maybe coach them a little bit, or hear them out. I think whereas maybe some of the CFOs or other people that we're talking to that maybe haven't had sales experience or been in a role where they have to get out of their comfort zone, they might be a little quicker to shut you down, or think this guy's just doesn't have something good worth talking about. But that's not, it's not really the case. It's just like you're in an uncomfortable situation, learning how to navigate. So, all right, very cool. Well, just a couple more questions here, and I want to wrap it up. But at this point in your business career, I'd like to hear, what advice you would offer somebody considering getting into business. And I know I got on my soapbox for a second there talking about delayed gratification, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I love to tell them just, the 4 words: make it your own. Mm-hmm. And then when I unpack that with them, Aaron, I say, make sure you fully understand the service offering, the product, and the fundamentals of what we do really well. Learn to probe and listen to the client, so that you're solving their problem and delivering what's to their best interest. And so when I say make it your own, is I'm always looking at metaphors and what are the things I can do that if I talk to automobile dealership, a distributor, wholesale foods, whatever it may be, I want to be able to adapt and play a different club for a different lie. if you will, going back to a sports analogy. So we all know in golf, you've got, what is it? 14 clubs. What's the PGA limit? But anyway, there's a limit of clubs. And each one is unique for the situation, right? So I'm trying to develop my arsenal, and my arsenal doesn't just include being able to repeat a script over and over. It's really learning what we're doing so that we can adapt it, and I can adapt it to the listener. And then I let the dialogue determine where my daylight is and where I'm going to go with the sale. So I tell people, make it your own. Make sure you immerse yourself and fully understand the service offering and the product. And then, man, learn how to dialogue, in your sales. Don't just speak at them, speak with them. And so those are the things I like to tell the new guys. There's some obvious things like, please, start with your warm relationships and people, and maybe if you can build your circles out with folks that you have a high trust relationship with, but that making it your own, I think somebody sitting across from you is going to sense that ownership. Your passion will come through, and passion can be linked to commitment. And that clarity, that passion, and that commitment is a vehicle that people are worth transferring trust to, I believe. And so I like to tell them that.
Awesome. Good stuff.
Yeah,
totally agree. All right. Well, then last question, we'll wrap it up. We always like to ask this question just to share some advice or ways that people can continue learning. So are there a couple books or things that you've learned that you'd recommend people check out?
It won't surprise you, but I would tell anybody, regardless of their age, in business, here's some no-fail. Dale Carnegie, How to Win People, Influence People, how to win.
Yep.
Right? Secondly, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. I think those two are going to develop fundamentals that are going to carry over. You're not going to become Michael Jordan in 6 months after walking to the gym. There are fundamentals that allow Michael Jordan to do what he does. And Dale Carnegie and Stephen Covey are two that wrote great ones on habits and how to treat people. And then Drucker is my next favorite writer. Anything Drucker on management and leadership. Again, that a lot of that has changed because of the mentality and the culture around us. So I would add Jeff Sutherland's book, Scrum, to that. That's just an example of one that is more about the art of doing twice the work in half the time. And he uses the Scrum as the metaphor by which he unpacks the book. So those are a few that I like. There's some others. The one I mentioned earlier, Unoffendable. I love that for salespeople because Brent Hansen discusses in there literally how to be unoffendable, meaning, and if you can sit across from somebody and dialogue, you're more apt to have a more objective conversation. You can handle the rejection much better if they detect, anger and other things in rejection in a conversation. It's probably going to quill the deal. But if you'll stay, not be offended and just keep objective, it's served me really well. So those books, I would say Unoffendable has impacted my life the most recently. And then the Carnegie, Covey, and Drucker are the three that are the concrete and rebar, the foundation of which I build everything else on.
Very good. I'll have to check out Unoffendable. I haven't heard of that one. I've read some of the other ones. The How to Win Friends and Influence People, I think, was one of the first books my dad had me read. I didn't have me. He kind of hid $20 in it and said, "Hey, if you read it, $20 is yours." So I read it. And it was great. I'm really fortunate, had great parents. I remember I've read that book multiple times over the years, just as refresh. But so it's one of those books, like every time you read it, you're like, the cover of the book kind of makes you feel like, okay, do I not have friends? It's just one of those books where the title doesn't do the book justice, probably. But that's a good one. Go ahead.
I was going to tell you, just because I sometimes I love to tell this story, but I had a tip that you might ask, what's the craziest thing you've ever done? So can I answer that? You can edit it out.
Absolutely. No, let's hear about it.
So I agreed. There was a friend of mine named Lyle Sankey, and Lyle Sankey was a national finals rodeo cowboy for a number of years. And I think he actually won it in the all-around cowboy category in the early 80s. He still does a rodeo school where he teaches cowboys how to ride bareback, saddle bronc, and bull ride. So he asked me and some other guys to come up and kind of entertain. Yeah, don't be impressed. It's just do skits and entertain this bunch of cowboys from all over the country. We were up in Kansas. And then we were going to be the rodeo producers. We were going to move all the stock, load the chutes. And one day they asked me to run the gate. They said, now, Kirk, the rope is broken. So you're only going to have about 4 feet of rope instead of a big long one that you can pull the gate open for the bulls to be released, right? So I'm standing there and I had staggered my stance, if you can imagine, with a short rope. So to pull it quick, I'm thinking I have to, put that left foot out or right foot out in front of me. Well, the bull loved to wedge his head into the hinge of the chute. So when the cowboy shook his head and we let go to pull that gate open, the bull, his head pushed against the gate, Aaron. It came open so fast, it hit me and knocked me down, and the gate went over my legs and trapped me on the ground.
Oh, no.
The bull was circling around, and I'm laying on the ground. I can see him, and he's coming back, and he puts his foot down. And I remember rolling my right shoulder up in the air. There's a photograph of it. And the bull's standing where he was trying to stand on me.
Sure.
But here's the deal. About this time, a clown jumps in between me and the bull and grabs the bull, as they'll do sometimes, reach out and get the attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I've forever been humbled in that one of the craziest things I've ever done is try to operate that chute with a broken rope. And almost paid a heavy price, but had somebody else doing their job really well do for me what I couldn't do for myself. And I can't say saved my life, but certainly saved me a really bad injury.
That's awesome. I mean, that's the bad. I'm glad it didn't end worse than it did. That's great. I love how you got a picture of it too. You're going to have to show me that picture sometime.
Some artists, so, I have it, but the guy photographing each of the guys at the school, and he caught it. So he sent it to me. He goes, you got to have this, because we all saw it and we were all scared to death. But here's the photo. So anyway, that was my story.
Awesome.
I was thankful for that clown and the work they do. It's like a first responder. I just have a high respect for them.
Yeah, they're pretty incredible. That's great. I love that story. When I had that job out in Montana doing dishes, we were actually on a dude ranch. I don't have a ton of regrets in life, but I really wish I'd tried to ride a bull that summer.
Do you really?
Yeah, they had a rodeo going. I'm kind of crazy like that, but I didn't. So anytime I hear like bull riding stories, I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm 40, maybe I still got a chance. Get out there.
We talked about it, but those fellas that were riding them, I mean, literally the tallest one was probably 5'11", 5'10", and they would look at me and they'd be like, no, McJunkin, no. And Lyle didn't want us to, because it was before my second year. So he just said, look, that bull, as tall as you are, if you get forward, he throws his head back, it could be a, skull crusher right there. That's why he said, the shorter guys keeping their gravity over the shoulders of the bull.
Mm-hmm.
But I forgot that one real quick.
Yeah.
All right, I'll let that go.
That was smart.
Yeah.
Well, good deal. Well, Kirk, hey, it's been awesome chatting with you. I've got a lot of really, really cool stuff. I'm going to enjoy rewatching this and sharing it with everybody. So, Kirk, thanks again for being on the podcast, and we'll put your contact information in the show notes so people can get a hold of you. But really, really appreciate you joining us.
Fantastic, Aaron. Thank you, and great job.
All right, thank you. Have a good one, Kirk. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Enterprise Builders Podcast. See you again next time, and make sure to click subscribe to get updates on future episodes.